Picking up where we left off last class, we were solving quadratic equations by graphing. So we graphed our parabolas, we found our x-intercepts. Our x-intercepts were our solutions. Now today what we're looking at is a new idea for us. We're looking at the graph of a cubic function, so something to the third power. And you don't have to worry about you actually graphing them. They are going to be graphed for you already. We're not going to get into how to graph cubics. But the idea still remains the same of how we solve it, aka find the zeros. Find the zeros means to also find what we saw in chapter 8, find the x-intercepts. So again, these are graphs of cubic functions where our highest exponent would be a 3. And we're doing the same thing we did last class with our quadratics, is we're just finding the x-intercepts. That's all we're doing. So for this first graph, it crosses the x-axis here at 0. It crosses again where x equals 1. And it crosses again where x equals 2. So if you're asked to find the zeros, you're just being asked to find the x-intercepts. So just like what we did last class with our parabolas when we graphed our quadratics, now we're looking at the graph of a cubic is all we're looking at. And again, the cubics will be graphed for you. We're not going to get into how to graph the cubics. But if you graph a cubic, again, that means the highest exponent is 3. You will get a graph that looks like the 6 that you see here. So let's just take a look at one more. Let's just look at the second one. X-intercept at -2 and an x-intercept at 1. So all it has to do is touch it. I know the ones on the first one, they crossed it also. But it's okay if it just touches it like we see in the second one. So you might have 3 intercepts, you might have 2 intercepts. It depends on the graph. It totally depends on the graph. But again, they will be graphed for you. You just have to find and identify the x-intercepts. That's all you need to do when you're asked to find the zeros. The last piece that I want to finish up with, we're going back to our quadratics. And it's asking us to approximate the zeros to the nearest tenth. What I want to show you guys how to do, though, I want to show you how to use the graphing calculator. So when you graph something like number 1, and at this point we should be able to graph it. We went through 3 or 4 different options of graphing last class. So once you have the graph, though, sometimes those x-intercepts, they don't work out perfect. The ones we did last class, they all worked out perfect for us. But sometimes they don't. So I want to show you guys how to use the technology to actually get those intercepts. And yes, we will still need to round, and that's okay. But I want to show you how to use the technology to get those. So turn your graphing calculator on. Take the cover off if you haven't done so already. And what we need to do is we need to start off, if we want our calculator to graph, I know it's been a little while since we used these, we go to y equals. Upper left-hand corner, it's highlighted in red right now on my screen. And we want to make sure we have everything cleared out that's in there. So anything that's in any of the y equals, just press clear. And make sure arrow down and make sure there's nothing hiding in those lower y equals. We want to make sure everything is cleared out. The other thing you want to make sure of, especially since a lot of my other classes use these, up at the top you see plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3. Well, one of my classes has been doing a lot with those scatter plots, so a lot of the calculators have them turned on, which means they're highlighted. So what you need to make sure of is that none of the plots at the top of your screen are highlighted. If they are, just arrow up so your cursor is on the highlighted one, like mine is. Press enter, and it will unhighlight that plot for you. So again, if any of the plots are dark at the top of your screen, if they're highlighted, just arrow up, use the up arrow, put your cursor on that plot that's highlighted, and press enter. So does anybody's screen not look like mine right now? So now what we want to do is enter in our equation. And I know we haven't graphed our quadratics before. We did some linear stuff first trimester. So we want to enter in x squared minus 3x plus 1. The x key is up next to the alpha button. It's highlighted in red right now on mine. It has x and then 3 other symbols on it. Squared, there is an actual squared key over in the far left-hand column. It's now highlighted in red on my screen. Be careful when you do the minus, the subtraction. The subtraction key is over in the far right-hand column. Down at the bottom is a negative sign for us. It's the negative key. They're not interchangeable. We have to use subtraction. And then we want 3 back to the same x key plus 1. Now that we have our equation entered in, now we have to make sure we're going to be able to actually see the equation. I know, again, a lot of my classes have been using these. So let's get a nice window to start with. Press the zoom key, top middle button right underneath the screen, and let's just go with number 6. You notice it says standard by it. That just gives us a nice window where the x values go from negative to positive 10, the y values go from negative to positive 10. Now every time we put things in, you don't always have to press zoom 6, but it's a nice thing to start with, especially if it's not your own calculator, especially if it's one of mine, and 4 other classes use these. So now we have a graph that looks like what we have in our book. And now we want to find those intercepts. In order to do that, and you might want to maybe jot it down on the side here, we press the second key, and then we press trace. So second, trace, and we're looking for the zeros. Notice option 2, it says 0. You can either arrow down to the 2 and press enter, or you can just press 2. Now where your cursor pops up is probably going to be different than mine. The question at the bottom of the screen says left bound. Let's try to find this x-intercept right here, this 0 where it crosses here. So when it says left bound, I need to make sure my blinking cursor is to the left of that point. So right now mine, I'm going to arrow a little more left so you can see it better. Here's the point I'm trying to find, the x-intercept, and my cursor is to the left of it. So make sure you move your cursor so it's to the left. It doesn't have to be on the exact point I have. It just has to be over to the left and blinking. Once you have it to the left, press enter, and then it's going to ask you right bound. So I need to arrow to the right and put my blinking cursor so it's to the right of that intercept I'm trying to find. I don't want to go too far to the right. I can't get up above the other intercept. I can't go too far. I've got to stay close to that intercept. Once you have your cursor off to the right, you can press enter again. And then it asks you for a guess. If you want to move the cursor around and see if you can get it right on the intercept, you're more than welcome to. I'll be honest, I always just press enter when it asks me for a guess. So there is our 0, aka our x-intercept, aka our solution, one of our solutions. And let's go ahead, what does it ask us to round to? Nearest 10th. Alright, so x is approximately 0.4. So there's our first one. If you want to draw a little arrow to it, you can on your sheet. Now we are going to do a second one, so if you need to jot down some side notes, please do so. I know there are a few questions like this in the practice, and especially when you get to some of the application questions. You're going to want to be able to use the calculators for those, use the technology. So if you need to jot down a few steps, there's a lot of space down here by these 3 questions. There's a lot of space. So let's find the other one. We have another x-intercept over here. So we go second, trace, and we want number 2 again. We want to find the 0. So again, second trace, we want number 2. It asks us left bound. So we're trying to find this x-intercept right here, this 0. So I have to make sure my cursor is just to the left of it. And it can be anywhere to the left of it. It can be anywhere to the left. And then I press enter. It asks me for right bound, so I've got to get my cursor to the right of this intercept I'm trying to find. So I have to arrow over to the right. Get your blinking cursor above that intercept off to the right. And press enter again. It asks you for a guess. Again, if you want to play around with it and see if you can get it right on, you're more than welcome to. I always just press enter. So our other one is approximately 2.6. Now notice when I'm writing those intercepts, I'm using those squiggly equal signs that mean approximately. It means we have rounded those values. They're not exact values, that we have rounded them. So what I want to do is I want to give you guys a chance to play around with the technology, see what you can do on your own. I will put the answers up here in just a second as soon as I get them on mine. So then you guys can ask me questions of where you're stuck at with the technology and also give you a chance to get those steps down. So if you need to write down y equals, if you need to write down the zoom 6 or second trace in number 2, whatever you need to write down for your steps. Alright guys, I have the intercepts up there for 17 and 18. So see if you can come up with those, write some steps down if you need to, and then I'll be around to help you out.